Welcome back to Just Start. I'm Jeremiah Stone. In a moment, you're going to see a conversation between myself and my colleagues, Gary Jones, Mark Rogers, and Casey Butler. As we discussed in our first podcast, we're sort of learning as we go along with how best to deliver content through the podcast medium. And we just recently recorded a conversation, which was actually much longer than what you're going to see, but we wanted to condense it down to what we think is an important part of that conversation. So what you're about to see is my colleague Gary speaking on his experience with having courageous conversations with his team around the topic of racial equity, and in specific, how you do that with a listening ear and without judgment. So enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, and again, experiences have helped mold, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, the types of expectations someone has from someone, right? But a lot of someone's there. But anyway, I hope you followed. Yeah, I think that the example I'm going to give is when you're in a diverse group. My team is very diverse, but when you're in a diverse group, you start to learn and you start to take things um, from everyone, right? And I will tell you, someone volunteered this information to me is that they had a difficult time growing up because they are someone of color, someone who's not white, and most of her friends, family, right, were not white either. They were minorities, and she had a hard time, with prejudice, racism, and those types of things, and it helped mold some of her reservations today that still come back, that still kind of come back in situations. Just recently, she was traveling and. She felt that the TSA and so were actually unfairly you scrutinizing her and her family just because of the color of their skin, and that doesn't go away. And she shared the story with all of us, right, which is great. But one thing she did say is that I realized that I am very hypersensitive based on previous events. Talking with everyone here and seeing that it isn't that way all the time, I'm a little more open, I'm a little more accepting of things, and I try to kind of look and understand, am I jumping the gun, am I actually being prejudiced based on previous events instead of what's actually happening in the now. And that's very powerful because we learn from each other, and you get a different perspective, right, from someone who's been through it. So I think that again, encouraging a collaborative environment where someone can come and offer that information, so you can actually hear those types of things and things that they've been through is really, really powerful, and certainly it helps within a team environment.
What was the team's reaction to that, Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the team, the one thing that the team, because Casey, I'm going to bring you up, for example. One of the things that we talked about is you're like, hey, Gary, Mark, and Jeremiah, I, because Casey, you're obviously not racist or prejudiced or those types of things. You're extremely open-minded and really a great person to work with, and a good friend too as well. But you said, hey, look, I there's some things that happen I don't even notice or I don't even witness, right?
Yeah.
So as she's sharing this story, I would say that my team is the same, and they were just absolutely shell shocked. They were, wow, I cannot believe that, you have to go through this or that this happened. Wow, I don't, I don't understand why, but it gives them a look at her life through
her
a different lens.
Yeah,
right?
through her, like it's like walking a mile in
Absolutely.
her shoes, right?
Absolutely. So they were very supportive, number one, of her. They were very supportive because they felt very bad for her, like, wow, it sucks that you have to go through this type of situation. I don't have to go through this type of situation. But guess what? You're valued here. You're our friend here. Your family here. And it really kind of helps on both ends to help really kind of bring the perspective together. So it was, again, it was a really powerful type of sharing of experiences. So.
Yeah, for me, I would share a similar story, but it was myself actually having a conversation with one of our leaders about, several months ago on the heels of George Floyd and the unrest that followed it. And I think she sensed that we were all, especially, people of color, feeling a certain way, like a lot of people around the country and people, not diverse people, but everyone felt a certain way. But she really felt that, we were feeling a certain way, and she reached out, put time on, and simply asked, how are you feeling? What do you think? And just a lot of questions that got at, Gary, what you alluded to, the past experiences. And, I shared a lot with her candidly, what the experiences. And Gary, we've talked about a little bit the impact of, the experience of being in the corporate world and being a person of color, and consistently being in environments where you look across the table and you are the only person of color in that room, and the only person of color you see all day for weeks, months, except for maybe the custodial staff or folks who are in the cafeteria, and how grating that is and how exhausting that is. And I'd never spoken to anyone that way, particularly not an executive, and shared that so candidly. And I just remember how gracious this person was, and she was so thankful, like at hearing every bit of uncomfortable realness that I shared with her. And she was just so gracious, and it felt, I felt comfortable with sharing with her all the things that I would never say to a person of not of color. Like, I've said a lot of this to, African American colleagues who experience the same, because they can, identify. But that was, a conversation that I had, one of the first ones that was really just kind of that open, hey, look, this is what has shaped my experience in the corporate world. This is what shapes, what I think and how I feel. And this is why, we are, so many of us, so frustrated and so just despondent about, what's happening right now. So Gary, that was a very similar, story, and it was nice to personally experience that, because you just, it's not something that you often get to experience.
Absolutely. All right, Jeremiah, let me add something just really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think that these conversations continue to happen, right? It's not just one. Those are my dogs in the background. Sorry, guys. But it's not just one conversation, right? It continues to happen, because guess what? The world is still out there. I read a story last night, Jacksonville, Florida, where it's an interracial couple who bought a house and they wanted it reappraised. They were looking to sell the home to reappraise. So they have a young son that they're raising, and they had Black culture and some things that were hanging on the wall, Black leaders and some other things on the wall. That appraisal came in $165,000 less after they decided to try an experiment, whitewash the house, take down those Black leaders, put up Shakespeare, take down Black family photos, those types of things. $165,000 difference appraisal in a matter of a month. So they did nothing else with the home. So things like that are still out there, right? Those are things that they still have to deal with, that we still have to deal with. So even if, and even when you have a better environment in your particular workplace or your environment, keep in mind, we still have to go home and out into the world. It's better now with COVID not having to do that. But now, if we go out into the world, it's still there. It's still there. So there's still that particular challenge. So this is an ongoing thing that we'll have to be prepared for. It's an ongoing conversation that you'll have to have. It's not one kumbaya meeting and everything's fine. This is something that we'll have to continue to perpetuate. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I should say we're probably going longer than we should be, but I frankly don't care, because I feel like the conversation is really good and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Because actually, just on the back of what you were just saying, Gary, and to go back to what you were saying, Mark, like, it does start with the conversation, right? Like, that's why we're talking about talking, is like that moving forward does start with that conversation. And Mark, to your example, I'm curious, what was it about the approach in that conversation, or what was it about that moment that inspired you or motivated you to have that dialogue that you hadn't had with somebody who looked like that leader in a long career in the workforce?
Yeah, it was, I thought it was an interesting time to approach the conversation, because it was really on the heels of everything, like in the throes of like riots and, fire bombings and, mass arrests and so forth. And so I thought it was courageous of, the person who reached out to have this conversation, because she didn't have to do it, and it's not, I mean, I can't imagine what it feels like to be on the opposite end of that, to feel like, well, on the one hand, I'm not, I'm not the perpetrator of the problem per se, but I feel accountable to listen and to be, an ear for you. So just her, offering up when it's not something that she had to do, really made me feel comfortable with, hey, let's get some value out of this conversation. And, we were clear, and she was clear about what she wanted to do, simply have a talk. And it was, hey, not as an executive from the company, but just two people, talking. And so, it was, the timing of that was perfect. And I hope more leaders are, have done and continue to do more of that, because that's what's really going to steady, your teams, is to simply have those conversations for them to feel like they can be heard and share experiences that they've probably never told anyone, at least someone not of color.
I guess for me, Mark, I wanted to understand, when you shared all of that, what did you need or want from that leader at that moment? Like, is there something that you really stood out to you as to the way they reacted, or something you wish you had gotten that you didn't? Like, I'm just curious, what you needed then in that moment, like, because I can't imagine me comforting you is gonna say, hey Mark, it's okay. Like, I don't think that's the right reaction. So I'm curious, what did you need in that moment?
Yeah, I think there's a commonality, in kind of what the situation today is versus, 10 years, 20 years ago. Every time we have some major issue, there is some level of conversation and, call for change that never comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that issue is because we don't often have as frank a conversation as we should have. There's a lot of tiptoeing around the topic. There's a lot of corporate speak when we speak about diversity, equity, and inclusion. For the sake of making people feel comfortable, we're making many other people feel uncomfortable. And so more than anything, what I want each time that I have, this kind of conversation, particularly with a person of authority or someone who has the power to affect change, is for them to finally hear what people have been saying for as long as we've had, companies and workforce and, diverse workforces and so forth, is to finally hear it and to, not offer what I think, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of is, lip service and, just the right moves that look good, but are they sustainable? Are they going to really, be things that change the way people think and feel and act? That's what, at the end of the day, I want to get out of it. It's not really, it's not really so much about making me feel better about, my situation as it is just making me feel better about where we're going as a country, as a world, and that is to listen to one another and to affect change in areas where we need to, have change. And this is one that's clearly, long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could just summarize what I think I've heard throughout our discussion today. Number one, intent matters. Like, if trust matters and intent matters. If you're signaling your intent, it makes the conversation more likely to happen in a more authentic way. Like, the listening, it sounds so simple, but it is the entire game, right? People do want to be heard, and you need to hear them. And so if you are engaged in the practice of listening, then you actually need to listen. And if you find yourself reacting, speaking, being defensive more than you are listening, then you're not doing it right. But you can do it right. We have to do it right. And I thank everyone for sharing their stories today. I thought this was a great conversation. As always, Mark Rogers, Gary Jones, Casey Butler, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to our next discussion.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
To speak with any of today's participants about your Just Start journey, email juststart@hudsonrpo.com.